On today's Locked On Texans podcast, how much of a threat are the vets to the cornerback room? Of course, newly added Kamari Lassiter. We'll talk about him and the battle for the slot. New guys, old guys, who wins it?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners, viewers, guests in general. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you to all of our returning listeners coming back, lending your ear as Cody and I continue to talk Texans. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, my man, Texas Credential Media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Cody, take it away.
And on today's installment, we're just going to be talking about the cornerback room in general because, John, listeners and viewers, as you guys know, one of the number one words, matter of fact, the number one term that Coach DeMeco Ryans and General Manager Nick Caserio love to talk about anytime we ask them about giving us their evaluation about the makeup of this team right now is competition. We know that's going to be true more so than not for a couple of positions, but yes. I think, John, this is going to be a topic that we're going to revisit a lot, especially knowing that next Monday is the start of voluntary OTAs. Yes. So we're definitely going to see the rookies blend in with some of the veterans, but I think we can all agree when you take a look at the competition level on both sides of the ball, I think the cornerback room has the biggest competition because not only are you looking for somebody who can take the helm as CB2 to start opposite of Derek Stingley Jr., you also got to take a look at that slot position as well, a position that Desmond King has held over the last couple of seasons. However, we're going to close off this show talking about the slot position. Midway through the show, I do want us to take a look at what Kamari Lassiter had to say about playing against the wide receiving unit, and I do believe that's going to be the determining factor into who is going to take the helm starting opposite of Derek Stingley in week one. And I know there are some people out there who hear that statement and think to themselves, well, Kamari Lassiter came into the draft as one of the best defensive backs in college football last year. So without a shadow of a doubt, you're probably thinking to yourself, of course, he's going to take the helm as CB2. However, John, you cannot deny the season that Jeff Okudah had last year with the Atlanta Falcons. And you also cannot deny CJ Henderson as well. I'm not too big on CJ Henderson myself. I think if anything, if he does make the team, he's definitely going to have a role on special teams. However, you still got to respect the fact that he is still a former number one, a former first round pick, just like Jeff Okudah, which means that if he is in a great situation, if he is in a coaching staff, especially playing for a coach like DeMeco Ryans, who loves to teach, who loves to develop, maybe they can find something in Okuda and in Henderson that the Detroit Lions wasn't able to do, that the Jacksonville Jaguars wasn't able to do, that the Carolina Panthers wasn't able to do. Of course, the latter of those two was the teams that CJ Henderson played for over the last couple of seasons. But John, when you take a look at Jeff Okudah, more so this is a question for him. Do you or do you not believe, or how much of a threat do you think he's going to be to prevent Kamari Lassiter for taking the helm at CB2?
Yeah, I think he'll be a threat, honestly, when you look at Jeff Okudah. Let me just say this. We love giving players to the special team unit, right?
Hey, that's only because this team really – hey, it's only because – look, I understand some people might hear that and say, well, you just want to give anybody to the special team unit. No, this franchise literally likes to build and value their special team unit. I believe last year they finished towards the top of the league in special teams, and they're going to try to replicate that success again.
Yeah, they will, man. They will. This team values special teams, but we love saying if it don't work out at this position, when you got 4 guys ahead of you, 5 guys ahead of you, maybe there's a shot on special teams. And the reality is, some of these guys ain't gonna make it, right? And that's just the truth. But when you look at both CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah, man, these guys are hungry for 2 different reasons. For CJ Henderson, I'll talk about him a little bit. CJ, he's hungry to prove that I still deserve to be in the NFL, right? Jeff Okudah, I think he's hungry to prove I'm still a starter in the NFL. 2 different, hungries, right? You got one is halfway full, halfway empty. And you got another one maybe with CJ Henderson that said, listen, I got to eat. I ain't ate in a while, and it's been bad for me. So I think that's what I like about the idea of those 2 players. But when I look at Jeff Okudah, man, he started off very solid for Atlanta last year. But the issue with Okudah, and I look at this throughout his 2022 and 2023 year, the issue with Okudah has been not being able to put it all together. If we go back last year, once he started in Atlanta, week 3 through 8, allowed 102 yards, 9 catches, 21 targets. That's some damn good numbers. Now let's flip that week 9 through 13, 348 yards, 20 catches on 28 targets. And then after this stretch of games, he was demoted in favor of rookie cornerback Clark Phillips. But when I said the good, I said the bad, let's go a little bit deeper into it, because when I look at his game on tape and you look at some of his numbers, of course, according to PFF, listen, in 2022, he helped shut down Justin Jefferson in week 3. 3 catches, 14 yards. In 2022, Okudah had games like the Vikings game, like the Miami game, which he only allowed 18 yards in that game, like the Vikings game in week 14, which he only allowed 10 yards in that game, like the Dallas Cowboy game in week 7, which he only allowed 22 yards. He has those moments. Vikings got Justin Jefferson. Miami got both Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and I think in that game they combined for, I want to say, maybe close to 150 yards in that game, that Miami game, and that was week 8. In week 8, he was on the field a lot. He was a starter, so it wasn't like he was in relief of anybody. He was on that field playing for the Detroit at that time in 2022. But then you also, again, you look at in that same year, 3 games, allowed 3 games of 100 or more yards, 9 games where he allowed a completion percentage of 70 or more, according to PFF. It's been all about consistency with Okudah, being able to string together a full season of positive productivity. And this will probably be his last shot to prove he's a starter in the NFL. And what I like about his chances with Houston is Dino Vasso. This has been a coach. Cody, how long have you and I talked about Dino Vasso?
And at least for the last 2 seasons.
Right? Houston added Okudah. They added CJ Henderson. They brought back Desmond King, who he's the old glory. We know what he can do. We know what he's going to do. We ain't got to talk about him a lot. They even brought back Tweak through it, Lonnie Johnson Jr. So you gave Dino Vasso 3 athletic, 2 former top 10 cornerbacks. I think somebody will hit out of that group. And when I look at CJ Henderson again, like I said, man, I think he's just looking to prove he can still play in this league. He has had some very difficult moments in the NFL, whether that be with the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Carolina Panthers. He's had some boneheaded moments, right? He's had some undisciplined moments. And when I watch some of his tapes, he gets beat off the line a lot with a quick release. And sometimes we've seen receivers just leave him in dust. So I think, again, giving Dino Vasso, a former top 10 cornerback, 2 of those, Lonnie Johnson with the range that he has with his athleticism, I'm excited to see what it is, man, what could turn out once we get to training camp. But I do believe Jeff Okudah has the greater chance of any of those 3 I just named, because he's been able to show flashes. He's held Justin Jefferson to under 20 yards. He's had 2 games like that, right? Just his productivity. When you go back and look at him last year, again, only 108 yards allowed in 4 or 5 weeks. That's good, right? No touchdowns allowed. That's good. He has to put it together. I believe I believe Dino can get it done. I really like it, and I do believe there is a real threat from that vet to start opposite side of Derek Stingley. And how often have we said here on the show, you gotta understand that some of these guys are going to need a little bit of time to get caught up to the NFL speed. Last one of those players. Yeah. So I think Okuda is the direct challenge to starting opposite of Derek Stingley.
Everything that you just mentioned, John, it kind of reminds me of the conversations we used to have about Jonathan Grenard and Nico Collins. And I say that because they too were in a situation where they just wasn't in a favorable situation. You know, when you take a look at Jeff Okudah, I mean, yes, he was drafted by the Detroit Lions to take the helm at CB1. Of course, it didn't really work out there. You go to Atlanta, CB2, and you start seeing some potential and promise. But even through some of the darker moments he had in this league, you could still see some potential and promise there, i.e. just like Jonathan Grenard and Nico Collins. And remember the conversations we used to have around those 2 guys last year? It wasn't a fact of can they stay healthy. It was also what can this new coaching staff do for both of those guys? Well, they got with a damn good coaching staff, and both of them had career seasons across the board. Of course, unfortunately, with JG, that career season has led to him getting a pretty good bag in Minnesota. And of course, with Nico Collins, I still think it's only a matter of time before somebody, hopefully it's us, but somebody break the news that Nico Collins has gotten an extension and will be continuing his career here in the city of Houston. I say all that just to say, not only does Jeff Okudah has the potential, but he is also possibly going to the best coaching staff that he has ever played with. Because yes, we can talk a lot about Coach D'Amico Ryans and
Wait a minute. Aaron Glenn in Detroit has done a hell of a job building that roster on the defensive side of the ball. And I thought that they were probably a match made for one another when I look at Glenn and Okuda.
Well, there was a reason why it didn't work in Detroit. And when you go back, and as of right now, his best career season was in Atlanta. I do want to mention this. I think he was drafted in the first round at 2021, if I'm not mistaken. If that's the case, that means that he came literally a year before everything started to fall in place for the Detroit Lions, which means that one season that he spent, his rookie season, might be the reason why he's in this position today. No disrespect to him, but a lot of these times when you take a look at these high profile prospects who are not panning out, sometimes it's not them, it's the organization. How many times we saw it here, right here in the city of Houston? I think with Jeff Okudah, man, he's going to be in a situation where he's not only going to thrive alongside the talent, but this is probably going to be the best group of coaching staff, not just with the head coach and Coach D'Amico Ryans, who loves to develop and teach, not just with Matt Burke, who has a hand in orchestrating this defense, but John, to your point, Dino Vasso, who has done a damn good job with this whole entire DB unit. Several players, including Steven Nelson, has credit their success to Dino Vasso. And look, if it comes week 1 of the regular season, if Jeff Okudah is starting, I'm not going to be too surprised, because that means that they are putting him in a situation to thrive. But most importantly, that means that he has done some damn good things starting with OTAs next week. As for CJ Henderson, no disrespect to the young man, but I just don't see it, because not only has I've not seen him showcase the potential and promise, I have yet to see anything that proves to me that he's going to have a valid or a solid role within this organization. Because as I mentioned, this position group right here is the deepest. Not only do you have a bona fide projected all-pro caliber cornerback in Derek Stingley Jr., but you also got some pretty good veterans and established veterans like Okuda, like Desmond King, who could come in and step up when their number is called. Then you got Kamari Lassiter, who is probably only a matter of time before we have a nickname between him and Derek Stingley Jr. Look, hopefully CJ can, make some noise in OTAs and training camp, but as of right now, John, I just don't see it for that young man.
Got some good games coming out this year. Get ready for the NFL season. The year kicks off with the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, an AFC Championship rematch. But for here in Houston, they take on Dallas. They got New England. They got some very great games this year for the Houston Texans, and you do not want to wait. As a matter of fact, even if you do wait, Game Time has you covered. What I like about this app, last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. They are full of deals, and you definitely want to get in. It's easy to find and buy NFL tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from your seat in the venue, the lowest price guarantee, cancellation protection, job loss protection. They're looking out for you even if you got fired on your day off, right? That's what Game Time provides, man. They got it all over at the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, either as you prepare for the Texans game or date night you may want to go catch a nice concert. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we talk about Kamari Lassiter competing with the wide receivers, I know Cody can't wait to dive into that. I thought it was interesting to just look at what Okuda is good in. Again, just looking at some of the tape, also going and looking at some of his advanced numbers. Okuda seems like a guy that thrives in man coverage, right? And is that an indication of what Houston wants to do? They got the guys up front now. You got Hunter, you got Anderson, right? You got Danico Autry. There's some speculation, and I think some people are like, okay, what does Houston do with their next D tackle position? Are they going to try to hold a spot for JJ to come take it? What are they going to do, right? I think a lot of people are not necessarily sold on the tackle spot in general, but they got guys up front that can get after the quarterback. You got two linebackers that can cover sideline to sideline with his curl flats and maybe even drop back a little bit in the middle of the deep third of the field, right? But will Houston look to utilize Derek Stingley to travel a little bit more this year, and Jeff Okudah and his ability to be just a little bit better using his physical traits and athleticism in man, where they look to try to transition to a more of a man-style defense compared to last year? I think it's interesting.
To answer your question, I think that's going to be the case for the Texans this year, because when you go back and you take a look at that playoff victory against the Cleveland Browns, remember that was the number one thing going into that game. You know, will D'Amico Ryans change up his defense and have Derek Stingley Jr. travel with Amari Cooper? And that's exactly what we did, and he shut down Amari Cooper. Later on in the week, we're going to be talking about this schedule. And the Houston Texans have several of the best wide receivers in the league. John, you probably have a point. That's probably why Caserio and D'Amico have put so much emphasis as to why it's so important for them to find CB2 to start opposite of Derek Stingley Jr., because that's definitely going to give them that versatility that you just mentioned. However, with so many of us talking about competition, the one thing that I've always thought about, what in the world does that look like come OTAs in training camp? And Kamari Lassiter hit the nail on the coffin when we had an opportunity to talk to him during rookie minicamp.
Man, I'm excited to, see all the guys. We got a really talented group of guys, and I'm just excited, just to, just go out there and compete with all of them. It's not really one guy that I can just, set out to the side, because they're all so, elite and talented.
My favorite part of that quote when he said this Houston Texans wide receiving core is elite and talented. And John, I think this is why I feel confident in saying that whoever the Houston Texans start opposite of Derek Stingley come week one of the regular season, and hopefully that is a job that they have an opportunity to keep throughout this entire season, barring any type of injuries or any type of lack of production on the field. I don't think a lot of people realize we rave a lot about this wide receiving core. And just at the start of voluntary OTAs, when majority, if not hopefully all of them will be there, this cornerback room is definitely going to have an opportunity to compete against some of the top wide receivers in this league and some of the most explosive. I mean, you already know who's at the top of this wide receiving core now, Stephon Diggs. If you're in a situation where you're saying, oh, snap, Jeff Okudah holding his own against Stephon Diggs, that's going to give Coach D'Amico Ryans and his coaching staff more confidence to say, you know what, let's utilize Okuda a little bit more when we got to go up against Justin Jefferson, when we got to go up against CeeDee Lamb. Like, I just feel like the competition level in training camp and stuff is going to do wonders for this team, to the point, like Coach D'Amico Ryans said, the number one thing that you want to do in order to build a successful team, it's not just bringing in talent and boosting up this position group, it's making sure that you have competition across the board. And look, one-on-one battles and training camp and OTAs
All the best.
Wonders, because yes, we're sitting here raving about Jeff Okudah, but what about Kamari Lassiter, who has held his own for over the last 2 seasons amongst some of the top wide receivers in college football? This is what competition is going to look like for the Houston Texans with that cornerback room. Who's going to be able to hold their own against Nico Collins, fresh off a 1,300-yard season? Who's going to hold their own against Tank Dell? Hopefully, prayerfully, speedy recovery. He's out there on the field, but we know what type of explosive playmaker Tank Dell is going to be. Who's going to hold their own after you look at the improvements that John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson has made to their game? Like, I really do believe that when you take a look at a lot of these cornerbacks, whoever emerges at the top, that is going to be the person that I feel a lot of people should have a lot of trust in helping this defense stay at the top of the league.
What I like about Kamari Lassiter and what he'll go through this year, I think Houston will play him inside and out, right? So I think he'll get a lot of different looks, of course, as a rookie coming into the NFL, playing some of that slot, playing some of that outside cornerback role. And I like, just Houston. I think they're going to try to get as creative as possible early on to just get him and that talent that he has on the field. Especially, again, we talk about Jeff Okudah and the threat these vets have. If he pans out to be good for Houston, training camp is going to be fun, guys. You definitely want to make sure that you're locked in on the Locked On Texans, because training camp will be fun. Cody and myself will be out there. But again, if Okudah balls out, he does what he does. You look at Kamari. Hey, go out there and cover Metro or Tank in the slot on this play really quick. Right, he'll get that work. He'll get that outside work. And again, out of college last year, I mean, I'm looking at his numbers again. This is according to PFF. In man coverage, he only allowed 17 yards, 6 forced incompletions, 2 pass breakups, 5.7 yards per catch, a passer rating of 39.6. Yeah, so he fits, and his zone numbers wasn't just crazy either. Not that they weren't too far from that, but I think again he fits. You got Stingley, who proved he can travel. He gonna be manned up. Now you got Okuda, who can play some man. Kamari, right? And of course, they'll switch it up. You do some cover 3, and a lot of times cover 3, depending on the down, that may turn into man, right? They'll figure it out. But I think he just fits, and then he'll get that work during training camp to where he's going to go up against a big guy like Nico, a shiftier guy like Tank and
John Mechie.
And Mechie, an overall vet who just knows how to get it done, like Stephon Diggs. I like what this young man is going to go through. I think he's going to go through the fire. He talked about wanting to compete with the best of the best. Houston has some damn good receivers, and I think it's only going to help him grow. And again, to keep restating what we were saying, it's not a rush for him to get out on that field, in my opinion.
You say it's not a rush, John, but what would you be more disappointed in? If you look on the depth chart,
what you got?
And you see Lassiter,
okay,
CB2, Jeff Okudah is CB3. Would you be more disappointed in that, or would you be more disappointed in Jeff Okudah taking a helm at CB2 and Lassiter being number 3? Like, for me personally,
I don't think I'd be disappointed at all.
I would be more disappointed if Jeff Okudah isn't able to beat out Kamari Lassiter. Okay. And look, once again, no disrespect to any of the other guys in this cornerback room. We're going to get into them in the next segment, but I truly do believe that this competition comes down between those two. And the only reason why I say I would be disappointed, because like I said in the first segment, looking at what he did in Atlanta, there's some potential and promise there. Not only that, this team is no longer the same Houston Texans team that's saying, hey, let's put out these potential up-and-coming players on the field and let's see if we could build around them. Let's see if they could be a foundational piece for us in the future. No, they're literally playing for something now. They're playing for with the expectations of being penciled in for the playoffs. They're playing, put it like this, they are playing so much to the point, if they don't make the AFC Championship game, it'll be a disappointment across the board. Forget Super Bowl, just AFC Championship game. That's how much the expectation has risen for this organization. Not saying that if you start Kamari Lassiter, you won't reach and meet those goals, but I feel like knowing how different this team is now, it would be more beneficial for them to start and utilize and depend and rely upon a veteran cornerback like Jeff Okuda.
Oh, you put it that way, I understand. I agree.
Yeah,
you put it that way, I agree.
Said. Just like what you said in the first segment, like he's already did good against Justin Jefferson, who in my opinion is a top 3 receiver in the league already. So I think, look, we could talk a lot about competition and all this other stuff, and once again, it's going to be good for this team starting next week. I keep saying this because I am ready for the start of voluntary OTAs. I can't wait to be out there and looking at the rookies going up against the vets and vice versa. But I look at Jeff Okudah, and I know some people might not be high on him, but there's something in that young man. And, you know, hopefully this year and next year, we're talking about a 3-headed monster between him, Stingley, and Lassiter. And at that point, I'm like, look, that the Texans passing defense that finished 25-26 overall in 2023 would not be the case next year. And looking at the quarterbacks and the offense that you're playing against, it can't possibly be the case for this upcoming season.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the only way Kamari Lassiter don't get on the field this upcoming year is if Coach D'Amico Ryans took it personal that he didn't know that he went to Bama. And Lassiter didn't like, he like, Coach went to Bama? Man, how you didn't know that? We're going to talk about the battle for the slot position, one of the more underrated conversations I think a lot of people may not be having or in a while talked about it. So, don't go nowhere. More Locked On Texans. Hey, it's winner take all season in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, we want to talk about the battle for the slot, but we haven't gave Lonnie Johnson Jr. Any real time in this show, man. I'm glad Lonnie's back, honestly. Right? You had Lonnie come in, and he was a part of that very bad time for Houston where they didn't know what he could play: safety, corner, inside, outside. And I like the fact that he's going to get an opportunity. No, for real. An opportunity and a shot.
I hear you.
Opportunity and a shot to come back to the place that drafted him and receive some real coaching. And not to say that hasn't been the case since he's left, but I think it'd be like poetic justice if he can come back and get it done here in Houston. And by the end of the year, maybe have a couple of plays under his belt that was impactful plays for Houston, whether that be what we always like to do, special teams, or whether that may be lining up with some 11-on-11 football on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm actually happy that Tweet Through is back. I'm just going to always call him Tweet Through because no matter what, he was going to do that. But the battle of the slot, Miles Bryant comes over from New England. In some cases, posted his career best. yards per catch this year, 9.7. He averages around 10 yards allowed per catch since coming in 2020. He's kind of gotten better and better each year. Overall, he's allowed 6 interceptions. 6 TDs compared to 4 picks, 10 pass breakups. He's primarily a slot guy. He can get back there, play some free safety a little bit. He can get in the box, but he is a slot guy. He is possibly the next Desmond King for Houston. I don't think he's nowhere near as physical.
I'm about to say
he's definitely physical. Not, he's not soft.
He's not like Desmond King.
Desmond King will lay that hat quick.
That's going to be an interesting battle too. I think Desmond King's still going to have an opportunity to put it like this. Desmond King is going to come in. He's not going to come in with the handed started job. Like, I think the only cornerback in this position group that's already handed, that has a starting job already, is Derek Stingley Jr. But King definitely has an advantage because to understand his impact just within Coach D'Amico Ryan's defense alone, there was a reason why we were all surprised when we got the news that he did not make the initial 53-man roster. He goes to Pittsburgh. Whatever happens over there happens. He comes back. And this defense took a major leap in the second half of the season.
Yes, they did.
And he was part of the reason why this defense took a major leap in the second half of the season. No disrespect to Miles Bryant. I think he's going to have an opportunity to play a vital role within the Texans secondary, but I don't see Desmond King losing his starting spot unless he either A, completely bombs training camp, or B, Miles Bryant literally just outperforms him that bad.
Thank you guys for listening to the DB show. It's pretty like that. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Wherever you listen to your podcast, give me a follow on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.